Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sabrina Kofer, and on behalf of Choice and ACRL, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, Transforming Access, Libraries and Publishers in the Affordability Movement, which is sponsored by Wiley. This session is one in a series of sponsored webinars from Choice and ACRL that addresses new ideas and developments of interest to the academic library community. Now I'll just put a couple links in the chat where you can register for upcoming webinars and watch previous webinar recordings. So before we get started, I'd like to point out just a few features of our webinar software. All attendees who join the presentation are automatically muted and your cameras are off, so don't worry about generating any noise or feedback. We've got that taken care of for you. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. To adjust the size of the slides or video, you can use the divider in the middle of the screen to slide the sizes to your liking. We are using the Q&A feature today. Please use it to ask questions of our speakers or to share any comments. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we have time for, so please do type your questions into the Q&A module as they occur to you. Remaining questions will be answered in a post-event document, which will be shared by Wiley. Also, there's closed captioning available for today's session. To toggle the automated captions on or off, please use the CC button on the bottom of your screen. Last, please note that we are recording today's program, and everyone who registered should receive a follow-up email with a link to the archive version. And with that, we are ready to get started, so I will hand it over to Liz.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's panel, Transforming Access, Libraries and Publishers in the Affordability Movement, brought to you by Wiley in collaboration with Choice. My name is Liz Toms, and I am the Wiley Americas Regional Manager for Core Institutional Sales. I've been with Wiley Publishing for over 17 years working in higher ed textbook and now with Institutional Library Research Division. I have the unique pleasure today to moderate this panel. Really looking forward to this as we have amazing experts here today, and I think an exciting hot topic to discuss. Now on to the topic of affordability in education. Affordability in higher education is a crucial component in students' ability to earn college and university degrees. Over the last 3 years, 2/3 of all jobs have required some form of post-secondary education. This issue remains top of mind for students, parents, and institutions across higher education. The rising cost of education is a serious and growing issue that we as global publishers and an institutional partner are committed to addressing. Here is what you can expect today. This interactive webinar will highlight affordability initiatives centered on library collections and on the eBook and textbook marketplace that supports them. The authors of the study, both librarians, will leverage a survey and interview data to discuss this trend in academic libraries. Panelists will articulate how collection strategies have developed to support affordable and equitable access, identify challenges librarians face in sustaining and growing these programs, and explain what librarians need from vendors and publishers to have a continued impact. Now, let me introduce to you our panelists. First, we have Rachel Scott, Associate Dean for Information Assets, Illinois State University, Milner Library. Rachel oversees collection development, technical services, digital scholarship, and scholarly communication initiatives, and cultural heritage activities. Rachel is also the editor of Library Resources and Technical Services and conducts research at the intersections of library of collections and their discovery, scholarly communications, and occasionally musicology. Next, we have Mitchell Scott, Coordinator of Collection Strategies, University of Kentucky Libraries. Mitchell has implemented eBook-based affordability programs at 3 different institutions of varying sizes and has authored articles discussing these initiatives as collection development strategies, along with how to manage their workflows. Prior to joining University of Kentucky Libraries, Mitchell worked at Indiana University Southeast, State Norbert College, and within the University of Wisconsin system. We also have Kim Walschlager, who is the Vice President of Strategic Sales US and EU at Wiley. Kim has been a driving force in higher education since 1992, collaborating with faculty to revolutionize courseware and textbook choices. Her extensive experience ranges from individual sales roles, where she partnered directly with educators, to leadership positions, where she guided teams to reduce learning material costs and enhance institutional affordability initiatives. Since joining Wiley in 2019, Kim has held several critical leadership positions, showcasing her ability to impact the industry significantly. And in 2024, she transitioned to the lead strategic sales initiatives for research division across the Americas and Europe. Kim's unwavering mission is to empower colleagues, educators, and students to achieve their educational and career goals. So with that, I will hand it over to Mitchell to get us started. Mitchell, over to you.
Okay, well, thanks, Liz. Good afternoon, everyone. So Rachel and I are going to kick us off by reporting on findings from a survey and interviews that we did with academic librarians across the U.S. that explored library-led affordability initiatives, their workflows, considerations, strategies, and their alignment with institutional mission. But before we jump to the findings, we wanted to do a poll to find out where y'all are at with eBook library-led textbook affordability initiatives at your institution. Okay, so does your library have an eBook-based textbook affordability initiative? Yes, no, working on it, previously had one, and stopped it. So we'll take about 15 to 20 seconds to answer. I will say this will be interesting because Rachel and I's survey sort of shut the door on libraries. We only talked to libraries that had active programs, and we sort of didn't talk to anybody that either was working on a program or had previously stopped a program, which we found out in conversations with librarians and libraries that can often happen. So around, oh wow, okay, 35% yes, 49% no, 15% working on it, and the 1% that previously had it. So a small portion, but still there. Okay, so a little bit of background. Rachel and I are both practitioners of these programs, and we've set up and managed these programs at various institutions. We both feel passionately about them, and we have a big stake in them. So we've done research in this area, and we've added our sort of institutional case studies to the already great ones that are out there. But when we got together on this study, we wanted to look at these programs across the U.S. and the commonalities and differences in how these initiatives are run, managed. So we wanted to look at the institutional alignment of these initiatives, how they fit into collection development strategy, and then how and why libraries undertake and sustain this work. So we conducted a mixed method study that collected 140 survey responses from October through November 2023. We had 96 valid responses. And so we worked really hard to distribute this survey to a mixture of institutions across higher ed. We had 12 baccalaureate, 12 community college, 45 doctoral university, 21 master's college, and then 3 other. And then we did 22 Zoom interviews with 25 academic librarians between January and February 2024. And we tried our best to get a good representation there as well. Okay, so another poll. So for those of you with existing programs, how long has your library supported this initiative? Less than 3 years, you started during COVID-19, prior to COVID-19, or you don't have an active program. And I will say, as we're waiting for your responses, I'll tell you what the survey said. So it seems that COVID was the defining moment for many of us, and and what that move meant to in terms of like supporting online courses and students at a distance. You know, this really marked a shift in how library licensed content became an outlet for easily accessible assigned materials. Let's see. Don't have an active program. Yeah, COVID-19. Let's see. Started during COVID-19, 12%. Okay, well, that's very interesting. Okay. So interesting, doctoral universities represent both the percentage of institutions leading these initiatives for more than 6 years and the highest percent of institutions reporting to just be getting started with 2 years or less of experience. Okay, so our research questions. How do library workflows for textbook affordability programs vary, and what are their primary considerations? What obstacles do librarians encounter in providing textbooks to students? And then how do library-based textbook affordability initiatives align with library and institutional strategic initiatives? So I get the first one. So workflows and their considerations. So this was the most interesting question for me, and probably where we spent most of our time talking to librarians during the Zoom interviews. As I was super interested in how others were managing these multifaceted, complex programs. And so I'm going to take you on a whirlwind tour of the time commitments, the processes, and then point out brief findings along the way. Okay, so obtaining the textbook data. So this is the key piece, right? This is the seed that allows all of this work to grow. So how libraries get access to this data varies. So the most consistent source or partner is the campus bookstore. But really, it's a mixed methods for most, with only 16% relying solely on the bookstore. 55% pair data with other methods or a combination of methods, and these methods include manual data collection from bookstore websites or course offering pages, no-cost incentive programs that collect faculty submissions, getting lists or submissions directly from faculty or academic departments or the registrar. And then 36% rely on 2 of these, 31% on a combo of 3 methods. And in terms of the amount of time that data collection takes, that varies depending on the process. So 34% spend 1 to 5 hours, and they probably have simpler collection mechanisms. And then 36%, 6 to 15 hours, and then 30%, 16 or more hours on this step alone. So you have the data, now what? So for some, work goes into verifying the data and doing quality control before the next step. So the majority work with what they get and do it relatively quickly, with like 69% spending 1 to 5 hours. 15% spend more than 16 hours on this step alone. And this is because depending on your source of the data or the number of methods used to obtain the data, that data verification is required. So our interviewees reported getting inaccurate data that needed to be checked, and this was probably coming from manual submissions from faculty, and that one of the most time-intensive parts of the process was edition integrity, or identifying the correct edition that was submitted, or the most current edition, and communicating with faculty to ensure that correct edition was represented in the data. So the first step, once we've got the data and we've cleaned the data, is to search for available textbooks for many of us, right? And to see what the library already has in terms of licensed content or own content, and in what user model, with DRM-free or unlimited access being the preferred models for these ebooks. So it sounds really simple at face value, right? You take a list of ISBNs or titles and search it against library holdings to see what the library has, but it's more complicated than that. And depending on your institution size, you know, you're talking like hundreds to thousands of ISBNs or titles on the bookstore list, trying to match those against hundreds or thousands, right, to potentially millions of ebook records. And the complexity of this process can be seen in the number of staff hours that we spend doing this work. For a third, it's relatively simple, but for another 29%, the process takes 16 or more hours. So it's a manual process for some, and it's done by searching each assigned book in either library discovery or backend systems. Some have automations, and whether they're homegrown or they're built into the library management system that allow for batch searching. And then this process varies considerably. So even on libraries that share the same library management system, like Alma, for example, we heard multiple ways of doing this sort of batch searching and identification of already licensed content. These are the free ones too, right? So we really want to get this right. So these are the ones where quality assurance is also essential to the process, because these are the ones that we already have licensed, we already have owned, and there's no cost to, you know, providing these as a assigned material. Okay, so many stop at just identifying already licensed content or already owned content, but most of us move on to the next step, which is purchasing new content based on the bookstore list, right? And it can be complicated here, because if you're taking on new costs, right, how these will be funded is an important question, because most of us are dealing with flat or decreasing library collection budgets. So around 61% reported using only existing collection budgets to support these initiatives. Interviewees commented that they were largely transitioning existing monograph budget to cover costs of buying these ebooks. The rest rely on a variety of funding models that include the combination of permanent funds like collections budget or endowment or foundation funds. But then some have built these programs entirely on the back of discretionary one-time funds like fundraising or donor support, which is a small portion, or partnering with student government, or receiving funding from provosts, dean's offices, or other institutional partners. Oh, let me go back. Sorry. So shared comments from interviews related how like the first and second semesters are the most expensive as you build your ebook inventory. In talking about sort of shifting monograph funding and viewing these as collection development strategies, interviewees talked about seeing these as more just-in-time purchasing rather than that traditional just-in-case model. And even viewing these as an extension of patron-driven acquisitions. And we heard a new model coined, which was new for me, that was called curriculum-driven acquisitions. So interviewees also commented on these programs connecting with EDI initiatives, and as faculty build more diverse curriculum, library purchasing of these adds those collections or those books to the collection. So licensing new ebooks. So for those who do buy new content, identifying which ones to purchase and how you're going to purchase them is a complicated task, right? 33% of libraries spend more than 16 hours on this step, and 14% spend more than 30 hours. So the time spent varies depending on the program and the design of the program and what purchasing criteria is in place. So examples include cost thresholds. So you'll only buy books that are $500 or less. Adoption of the adoption history of the book, like how many times has it been assigned? Is it multiple semesters? Item status, which they'll only buy required and not recommended. Course enrollment, which means you have to have course enrollment data at the time you're doing this decision making. Ebook vendor platform preferences, you'll buy from certain publishers or aggregators, or you choose those over others. Most of us take a pretty straightforward approach to which ebook models to include in these programs, and DRM free and unlimited access having the preference. But some have had success using limited 3-user models or even purchasing multiple 3-user and 1-user models to cobble together an access level that works for the course and that are using the book. Okay, providing access and notifying users. So providing access seems to be relatively straightforward as like our library systems have made it easier to activate ebooks. But for some of the bigger programs, you're talking about activating, 50 to 100, 150 ebooks each semester. So the notification for this process is where it gets complicated and multifaceted. I feel like I say that for every slide about this workflow. So 25% spend more than 16 hours on this step, and 14% spend more than 30 hours. So like obtaining the textbook data, this process is ever evolving and includes a variety of methods, each adopted to try and extend the reach of this program and this initiative and these ebooks and get them into the hands of students. So 78% email faculty directly, and these emails vary from individual emails to faculty that include books for courses to sometimes spreadsheets to faculty for all the books for all the courses that they have available. Some of these emails are centralized and sent by the staff that manage this process, while others leverage library liaisons to do the contacting. So this has also been an area where automation has played a role, and there were suggestions of using Microsoft Power Automate to automate the emails using mail merges from Excel and Word, and then Python being used to create lists and individual emails. Okay, assessment. So this is the final step for many, or at least the final aspirational step, and it's complicated, right? Because due to the complicated nature of assessing these programs and the amount of time required to successfully run these programs, many don't have time to do the assessment, and many stated that it's hard to do both well. So some standard metrics that we heard from libraries that collect assessment data on these programs is to calculate student cost savings with the number of students enrolled times the cost of the book. Another calculation we heard was calculated cost library to provide these materials, so library cost, versus the calculated cost for students. So for example, the library spent $20,000 this semester on ebooks for these programs, but the students saved $350,000. So practitioners discuss the many caveats to these calculations, how enrollments change constantly, and you have to have current data to evaluate that. Which bookstore cost you're evaluating. Is it the purchase cost, the rental cost, the use cost? Whether every student is actually relying solely on the library ebook, which these assessments sort of suggest. And then for our colleagues that run these programs, usage collection and evaluation can be challenging because sometimes they don't often set in the departments that have access to the usage data. And this is a complicated sort of form of usage collection. Okay, so there's also a huge project management skills that go into this, right? And so I've gone through the various workflows employed to manage this process. And, think about the time commitments that we outlined for each steps, and then think about when this process kicks off for a lot of libraries. Like 31% get access to the required material data 1 to 2 months in advance of the semester. 27% have access 3 to 4 weeks. 25% have access 2 weeks or less than to the start of the semester, and for 11% it varies. These programs are largely running a race to complete all this when classes start, but most are shooting to get notifications out before classes start, right? Many are only getting a one-time pull of the data, which means we're reliant on faculty to have submitted their materials to the bookstore or through one of the other data connections in a timely manner, well in advance of when we're getting our data pull. And this is not the case. These faculty submissions come in late. It takes a lot of prep time, right? And if you're getting the books, if you're getting your list 1 to 2 months in advance, it means that you're usually not dealing with an accurate list or the most complete list possible, right? So for many, this project is collaborative and crosses library departments and reporting lines. But we all know managing projects, usually the more people involved, the more complicated it is. There are a lot of specialized cooks in the kitchen for those that have a lot of people involved in this program. But we heard from some that collaboration is natural, and the library can easily embed this process within existing workflows and time commitments. And then we heard from others that it's more complicated. And as many libraries are already at capacity, creating and sustaining a program of this complexity creates issues related to work balance and staffing. Okay, over to you, Rachel.
All right, thank you, Mitchell. So I'm going to talk about some of the obstacles that our participants reported. Namely, time. Time was on everyone's mind. The time-sensitive nature that Mitchell was just referring to can be a huge obstacle. And this is especially true for program leads who work outside of acquisitions or technical service units. A scholarly communication librarian, for example, shared that it had been a challenge to get their initiative prioritized within collections and acquisitions workflows. Their acquisitions department told them essentially to get in line with everyone else. And as we know, delays in the process can result in faculty and students becoming aware of materials after courses have started and students have already purchased, their textbooks. So that would completely undo the benefits of the project. Because most participants have not received additional permanent funding, they've gotten very creative. One partners with university housing to set up donation bins for students to give textbooks back rather than sell them. This creates a multi-copy inventory for the library and generates sales income from Better World Books. Another participant whose library functions as the campus bookstore indicated that all of the funding they use for their initiative comes from student textbook purchases from a third-party vendor. So the library gets a cut of that, but their budget varies and fluctuates very widely from one semester to the next. Some participants are pairing textbook affordability initiatives with traditional course reserves, or they're retrofitting existing course reserve services to support textbook affordability more robustly. Another issue is with collection development policies. Some library personnel do not accept textbooks as an appropriate use of library collections budgets. Several noted that policies and practices persist in their particular work environments, but the ease with which they can circumvent the policies maybe says a great deal about how enforceable collection development policies are. Assumptions around format preferences of both students and faculty also persist and have been damaging to some of these initiatives. We heard from only 1 or 2 of our participants about the use of controlled digital lending. So it's not widespread in textbook affordability initiatives, but it does show how librarians are incorporating new technology and strategies into existing services. Library platforms, including Alma, offer CDL management, and it seems likely that as CDL grows in familiarity, librarians will increasingly incorporate it into their workflows. All right, another big obstacle was vendor and publisher issues. Interview participants identified the lack of unlimited user licenses and DRM-free options as a major limitation of their affordability work. Licensing titles individually and not part of a bundle or collection was another common concern. as was licensing courseware content and materials available exclusively via access codes. Unsurprisingly, participants find the pricing of licenses frustrating. Participants at some smaller institutions suggested that pricing should be more affordable and sustainable for individual eBooks. One noted that pricing of most electronic resources is based on enrollment, but that may not be true for individual eBooks. So a university with an enrollment of 60,000 pays the same amount to license an eBook as a college with 600 students. Although eBooks may be discoverable, there could be challenges in determining on the front end whether a title is owned or subscribed, has unlimited or limited user license, and that presents additional kind of time constraints in the workflow and frustrations for the users as well. Participants mentioned that metadata quality and usability issues kind of play into some of their decision making and may inform which platform is preferred for the initiative. Publishers pulling, bundling, or restricting terms of access were common concerns. Bundles do not allow for title-by-title selection, which participants largely reported preferring. Some participants reported contending with unplanned changes to subscription content, which made them question the wisdom of including subscription content in their affordability initiatives. So bookstore lists generally improve the workflows and efficiency of library-led affordability initiatives. One participant indicated that a college administrator was more interested in maintaining a relationship with the commercial bookstore than supporting affordability initiatives on campus, and that was a big obstacle to their work. Bookstore inclusive access programs were also cited as a threat to library affordability initiatives. Participants representing 5 doctoral conferring institutions indicated that faculty could opt into inclusive access programs from the bookstore, and that when faculty opt in, librarians didn't see a role for their work. Right, and the final research question was about how library-based affordability initiatives align with library and institutional strategic initiatives. And the responses were generally quite strong. A recurring theme was that textbook affordability initiatives are one of the most direct and meaningful ways that a library can support student success. One participant whose program started in the wake of pandemic budget cuts said that they, quote, needed something happy to do. And, amidst all the hardship, I think these plans and programs and initiatives have provided some meaningful work for librarians that have allowed them to connect directly to student success. One library director indicated that it is easy to communicate the value of library affordability to deans and directors and administration. And so in these ways, participants see their work in affordability aligning with library strategies. All right, at the institutional level, we saw a little less alignment, at least across all of our range of participants. One interviewee at a Hispanic serving institution with a large first-generation population and a large percentage of Pell Grant recipients shared that at their institution, affordability is in their blood. They attributed the success of textbook affordability fundraising initiatives to strategic alignment at the institutional level. But then we heard from some smaller liberal arts colleges where affordability did not seem to be on anyone's radar, and that was not terminology that worked in talking to their administration. So it kind of varied. It had varied considerably from one context to the next. All right, and then we talked to folks about the alignment and intersection of open educational resources with library-led textbook affordability initiatives. And although OER and textbook affordability happily coexist at many libraries, some participants shared examples of the tensions they see between OER and textbook affordability. Both have a variety of limitations that we won't have the time to explore here. But one participant at a community college noted some of the kind of tension that I wanted to share. They had a speaker who had come in to advocate for OER, but they did so in a way that faculty felt was condescending, that threatened their academic freedom and stigmatized decisions to adopt traditional textbooks. Another participant noted something that I hadn't thought of, and that was that if administration incentivized and encouraged OER, future administration might penalize faculty for a lack of OER engagement in the future. And so there are some tensions, but I think Mitchell and I agree that they coexist very happily, and in fact can serve needs that the other can't quite achieve on its own. So our major takeaways are summarized in a single list here. But our findings indicate that these programs have grown considerably over the past few years and are sustained even despite permanent designated funding due to a positive connection that they have with library and institutional goals. There is considerable evidence that the cost of textbooks is a barrier to student success, and reducing the cost of textbooks is one of the most direct material support that librarians can provide to promote the engagement and success of our students. The addition of these well-used texts, which are commonly assigned multiple times, provides good value to librarians interested in responsible stewardship. Although participants acknowledge the opportunity cost of textbook affordability programs, both in terms of their staffing and budgets, they indicated that their work is strategic and appreciated. Reasons that have been offered in support of abstaining from this work: library collection development policies, commitment to a commercial bookstore, valuing bibliographers' expertise over student needs. These reasons all seem outdated in a current environment of aligning library services with institutional priorities of student success and equity. The study revealed the extent to which textbook affordability programs have grown out of their local environments. No two programs are alike. The diversity of program workflows, budget, focus, and scope demonstrates that these programs can scale from a small portion of assigned materials to a comprehensive one-time financial commitment of a few $100 to an annual expenditure in the tens of thousands. Such scalability allows for piloting affordability projects to establish and demonstrate their value to local administration. Similarly, participants reported a variety of obstacles encountered and took different approaches to overcoming them based on local needs and resources. Funding concerns were articulated by almost all participants, but they nonetheless found money to continue the work. Although collection budgets are most often tapped, librarians have demonstrated great creativity and resourcefulness in funding their initiatives. The variety of funding sources highlights the versatility of these programs, their attractiveness to donors, and their eligibility for different funding models. As publishers and vendors make more textbooks available to the academic library market, whether as packages or individual titles, librarians may face challenging decisions about how far they're willing to go to support these initiatives. Many libraries currently support these initiatives using existing collections budgets rather than new allocations. Although this approach works for now, an increase in available textbook content might lead to competition within limited library budgets. If libraries decide to invest more in these initiatives, then a greater percentage of library funds would go towards supporting commercial textbooks, which might be problematic for advocates of open education. In conclusion, as demonstrated by the survey and interview data, textbook affordability initiatives are at various stages of starting, seeking new efficiencies, pursuing new partnerships to grow and advance, and iterating all along. It's our hope that librarians unconvinced by textbook affordability initiatives consider the value and alignment of these initiatives with institutional strategic priorities. These initiatives are scalable and customizable. They can be adapted to meet institutional needs and overcome institutional obstacles. And with that, we'll head to the final poll, or the next poll. Have you added or subscribed to eBook packages to directly support textbook affordability initiatives? The options are yes, no, we wouldn't, or no, but we would if it were the right fit. And with that, I will hand it over to Liz.
I think you need to come off mute.
There we go. Here's the answer. Interesting. 25% replied yes, 20% no, we wouldn't, and 55% no, we would, but if it was the right fit. Awesome. Well, thanks, Rachel and Mitchell. That was really great, super informative. And now we are going to start our questions to the panel to discuss this further. We've had a couple of questions come through the Q&A box, so I'll go through them one by one for the remaining time that we have. Okay, so question number one. how do you view the academic library textbook market? Is it an area of interest, growth, and challenges? Mitchell, I'll pass this one to you.
Okay, thanks, Liz. So the academic library textbook market, I mean, I think it's pretty fascinating if you take like that 30,000-foot view of it. I mean, and I think it's challenging because it seems so crowded. Like there are so many players in this space, and each seemingly like trying to address affordability in the way that they can. You know, I mean, bookstores have been offering affordable solutions for a long time with making it that students can rent, they can buy used, they can rent digital. And, you know, it seemed as like more students purchased from third-party vendors. Bookstores seems to be losing footing. We had like multiple interviewees point out that like, you know, bookstores are making more money from apparel than books. And then libraries like stepped into the space with like OER programs, these eBook programs that we're talking, no cost incentive programs to flip courses to no-cost solutions. And then inclusive access models are here as well. And they've grown as a way for bookstores and publishers to offer affordability solutions to students. And these programs, they can be delivered on a course-by-course basis or as like a flat fee. And that flat fee model, I think, with like no opt-out option has been, you know, I think there's, you know, questions about how affordable it actually is. And then there's also like some, you know, I think there's some, you know, pushback from libraries that, you know, these flat fee models don't allow libraries or institutions to pursue some of the other affordable models that we've been talking about. So I do think institutions see the importance of making required materials free and available on day one. And I think, you know, in some instances, like they see it as a competitive advantage, and it may be appealing to parents and students as they make enrollment decisions. So just like right down the road from us at Eastern Kentucky University, they recently announced a BookSmart program, and the bookstore is actually provisioning all materials to students at no cost. So no cost to students. The institution has picked up this cost and are paying it. But the materials are being sourced and delivered by the bookstore, right? Which is another model that's just shown up in this area. So I think libraries are interested in that model. I think we could see ourselves sort of delivering and procuring and providing materials. But again, like all of the challenges that Rachel talked about are present if libraries need to scale and do this work of, you know, budget, staffing, infrastructure to do it. I mean, we, you know, as a part of our interviews, we talked to University of Wisconsin Stout, which has a program very similar to what EKU BookSmart is, but it's managed within the library, and they've been providing all access to materials to their students for like decades, right? And so I think, you know, programs like that, theirs isn't built on institutional funding. I think it's built on student segregated fees or student tech fees to fund it. But either way, like there are models where these fit within the library, right? And I think when they fit within the library, oh, we also heard that, you know, there are bookstores disappeared from campuses, and libraries have stepped in there, and they're the ones that receive the required material list, and they, you know, what they can't provide that students use third party to purchase. So I think like these models, like residing with the library, like what we, you know, sort of talked about, allows like all those sort of affordability pieces to come into play to save students money, whether it be, you know, institutional access models, or whether it be, you know, ebooks, whether it be, you know, however, to save students money or to save the institution money, depending on like what's funding it. So that's my long, like winded answer of the marketplace and the challenges.
It's true. Kim, do you have any additional thoughts as a publisher?
Yeah, I think the one thing that Mitchell and Rachel both have stated, you know, I think the key thing to remember is no two programs or institutions approach affordability the same way. As somebody who has been working with, you know, traditional publisher-led affordability measures, partnering with institutions, I think the number one thing that we've got to get better at every institution is the communication. You know, I think Mitchell and Rachel, in your study, I think the one thing that you sort of hammered on is in so many cases, the bookstore doesn't talk to the library. The library is not talking to, you know, the key stakeholders. And I think, you know, obviously I know that sounds so easy to do, but I think, you know, the more that like you get the parties at the same table, I think we could accomplish even more great things. But I think I've been working in a variety of different publishers or with a variety of different publishers over the course of my career for like the last 10 years. And I think all of our research shows, if students have access to their learning materials on day one, they're more likely to succeed in the course and stay at the institution to finish their degree. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we really want to accomplish. But I think that collaboration is the critical piece, be there to driving these programs.
Yeah, that is very true. Thank you, both of you. That is very true. I have a second question. What are your thoughts on textbook packages marketed to academic libraries, and what are they, and what level of interest have you seen for this content from academic libraries? Rachel, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, I'll get started. We did the survey, and then we also did follow-up interviews, and I love interviews because you can ask kind of the why and ask people to really dive down into it. And so we did hear from some folks that were very happy to use subscriptions for their affordability program. And, if they had access to it, why not? And then we heard from folks that a participant from a specialized institution that dealt with health sciences, and they had some resources that were subscription-based, I believe, that were packages that served them well, and they were using multiple titles from that collection. And so I think, the answer is it depends, and it's so hyper-local. Depends on funding, depends on engagement. We see institutions where some adoptions are made at the department level, made by committees. And I think if you can catch it in that process, there's a stronger chance that something could be arranged where you get a bunch of folks who really want to teach texts by X publisher. There's consensus that is the best publisher for their area, and so a decision is made, and that can save students a whole lot of money. I think, speaking from my own institutional context, there's a very strong tradition here of academic freedom and of autonomy in the classroom. And so a package would be a harder sell in my institution. Now, we see, when we're investigating options for licensing content, some texts are only available in a package. And so I think it really would come down to that question of start with the faculty adoptions and see what they're going with in any given semester. And if it turns out that there are multiple titles that are available in this collection, and the math works out, we'll do it. So I think for me personally, it's not a question of whether I'm opposed to something theoretically. It's what is actually going to work with my budget and my local needs. And it starts with the faculty adoption. That is where we start all of our processes.
Thank you. Kim, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I actually agree so much with what Rachel said. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to that faculty decision. And I think the one thing from the publisher side that we're seeing more and more, and I think this goes into the research that's been done here, is faculty are delaying their decisions more and more. And so if you back up that decision, and I think you had mentioned this in the research, if they don't make that decision until 2 weeks before classes start, it really handcuffs you, to tap into some of those other resources that we could deliver through the library. And I think it's again, I come back to that communication piece and that partnership piece. If we can get more institutions and administration to understand the importance of this, it's just a win-win all around. But I agree with Rachel and everything that she said. It's just in some of these cases, faculty, for a variety of reasons, are just pushing back their decision, or they're focusing on other things, and that decision happens late almost too late to really impact. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we have another poll, and then we'll take a few more questions. This poll is: which programs or disciplines are the most in request for academic content? We'll take a few seconds to let you select some options. Okay, but the answer is number one was humanities at 30%, followed by medicine, followed by social sciences, other. Wow, business is 3%. Very,
Interesting.
very interesting. Other, I wonder what that graphic design art, maybe.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Rachel or Mitchell, does that surprise you? Does any of this surprise you?
No, I mean, I think we've seen that like these programs, these ebook based textbook affordability programs have their greatest impact in the disciplines that aren't providing traditional textbooks because we can't,
Okay.
we can buy those, right? And then it's those traditional textbooks are often assigned at like a lower level.
Mhm.
And so like my program and I think Rachel's program, we've talked a lot about, we're able to provide a lot of materials for social sciences, humanities, education, and then occasionally pick up books or courses in some of those other disciplines. But largely, that's sort of where the greatest impact is being had for us. You got anything to add there, Rachel?
It was almost funny how closely Mitchell's and my experience aligned there, with education and comm being right up the top with history and some of the literature. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me. And I think part of it too, like, we start with what's available. Again, faculty selection is first, but then also once you've served people well, there is a word of mouth element. And so we hear from a lot of folks in education and literature and history who say, hey, you got a book for me last semester. Can you get it again? Or
Yeah.
yes, we still have it. It's a perpetual license. Or, they'll ask for a different title that they're teaching. And so I think that kind of might play into it too. A good experience is a great for word of mouth throughout the department.
For sure.
I have another question here, which is pretty interesting. I think this is for you, Mitchell and Rachel. Do you have any tips for getting reluctant, resistant library staff on board to running a program like this?
Mitchell and I talked to so many people who were just like thrilled to be doing this work and found it so fulfilling, found that they had forged really interesting and gratifying relationships across their campus from doing this work. And so I think it was a self-selecting sample, right, that we talked to. People we spoke to are super into this work, but we did hear from some of their folks, or we did hear from participants that some of their colleagues struggled with it. And I think that might be instructive to kind of talk through some of that. So again, folks who weren't clearly situated in the acquisitions or technical services side of the house had to sell their colleagues on it and like what the program was intending to do, how it would benefit students, how it would reflect well on the library to do this work. And it is, I think that seeing the bigger picture and the impact of the work does help address some of those concerns about how much work is involved. I think another aspect that's important to acknowledge, and Mitchell did this well in discussing the first part on workflows, libraries have been licensing ebooks for a while now. We know what to do, we know the steps, we have people most often who are hired and trained to do this work. So although it is additional labor, it's also an additional type of labor that we are trained to do and have some knowledge of and familiarity with. So it's not like learning how to build a rocket. It is kind of more of the same. So I think that helps. And I also think in talking about budget, because we did hear from folks who said, well, we have this collection development policy that says we're not supposed to buy textbooks, but we work around it. So when it comes to the budget side of it, again, we've heard people being incredibly creative and getting donations. It being the project used in a giving day, an annual giving day at the institutional level, at the library level. So I think all these things, kind of thinking bigger picture, remembering that we know how to do this work, all help convince people about it. But we did also, after the study, hear back from one participant saying that There had been so much pushback about staffing because they were short-staffed that they could no longer buy new titles. Their library leader had made that decision that they were no longer going to do that because of a lack of personnel. So you can't do more with less. We know that, but it's about kind of finding ways to prioritize this relative to some other projects, I think. But Mitchell, I'm sure you got some other ideas there.
Yeah, I think it's complicated for all the reasons you explained. And this work too, like, it happens like one of the busiest times of year for libraries, right at the start of the fall semester or before the start of the fall semester. And then you're repeating it like, year over year, spring, summer. If you can get access to winter room, how many times does this process repeat itself? I would say though, just to add, I think, the alignment with student success and equity on your campus, like undoubtedly, your institution, it's within the mission or strategic priorities to, support students and align services and departments with student success and equity. And, within the library, like this program does that, right? In a way, I've been doing collections for a while now, and this program aligns to those two things in a way that I really have struggled to align collections, right? And, it's hard to align journal usage or database usage to how it supports student success. I think we've tried in some of our research to look at like GPA and retention and graduation, but like I think this one, from the success we see with open educational resources and what, every student having access to the materials that are required for their courses on day one, what that means, like I think this, like a library initiative like this really connects in that way.
Yeah. So I have another question that came in after that, and it's like the future of what we're talking about. So the question is, how do you see library support for textbook evolving in the coming years? Any
library support for affordability evolving in the coming years? Is that the question?
Yeah, it's how do you see library support for textbooks evolving in the coming years?
So Mitchell and I have talked about the fact that our study is, specific to this point in time, and the marketplace will continue to evolve. I think that we'll see more offerings from bookstores, from publishers, from vendors, more institutional approaches. So Mitchell mentioned Eastern Kentucky, right? Is that I think we'll see some other institutions step up and try to figure it out. I think we've already seen some libraries taking a more comprehensive approach. We talked to someone in a community college setting who was about 80 to 90% fulfillment, right? They could deliver a good chunk of the books. And so that's really exciting by combining ebook licensing and CDL and one of the textbook digital platforms, Red Shelf, right? And so I think it will only get more wild and more local, but I think people are really invested in this work, so I don't foresee librarians stopping willingly. There might be some situations at one institution or another that would preclude library approaches to the work, but I think that librarians will continue as long as they are able and to the extent that they are able.
Yeah, I would just add that I wonder, since textbook packages are being offered and available to libraries, we've seen more, there's multiple vendors now and publishers that have textbook packages available. I wonder if we, libraries strategically, come up with ways to employ those. And, I sort of think about all of these no-cost incentive programs that are run through libraries and, trying to transition faculty to no-cost solutions. And a part of that can be your existing access to eBooks. Certainly you could buy the titles that faculties want, but there could be a portion of faculty that are part of these programs that would be willing to adopt what the library already has access to. So if those programs sort of remain and libraries are, supporting those and that no cost transition, then I could see having an inventory of available stuff, right, for them to do that selection, playing a role. But, also like, title by title, certainly what we want, because it leaves it in the hands of the faculty to make that decision. So, so I could see the push and pull of that, right? Title by title or a package as a complicated thing as we move forward.
Yeah, it's all about the evolution. You think back to 10, 15 years ago, and the faculty choice or the desire was a print textbook and an access code. And that's now evolved to, eBooks and OER. And I just think that, to Rachel, to both of your points, I think it's the evolution and just, staying close to what we can all work together to deliver to those students, and working with faculty along the way, I think, is the most critical pieces here.
Great. Well, we have 4 minutes left, so I think we can run one more poll. So can we run that poll? Do you feel that your initiative has stable institutional and financial support for it to continue? Yes, no, or maybe? Let's see what the answer was. Maybe. No at 38% and 26% yes. Any comments on that?
I think there's a lot of uncertainty, but I can say that our research showed many librarians are so committed to this work and will find some mechanism to continue it. Again, even if it is scaled down, even if it can't be as extensive as it may have been when it was started up, they'll continue to do the work and continue to serve their students as they can.
Thank you. Well, we're at time. I would like to, before everybody goes, I want to thank everybody for the speakers. A big thank you, Rachel, Mitchell, and Kim, for lending your time to this panel. Attendees, thank you so much for attending. We hope you find this helpful. If you wouldn't mind answering this last poll for us. Any remaining questions will be answered in writing and communicated to you by email. So as a reminder, you will get a recording of the webinar and slides shortly. And that concludes this webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you, Liz. I'll just echo you and say thanks so much to Mitchell, Rachel, Kim, and Liz for taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you to our attendees for your questions and your comments. I'd like to remind our viewers that we did record today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Choice and ACRL with a link to the recording. Also, if you have a few minutes after the presentation to fill out a brief survey, we would really appreciate it. So thanks again to all of you out there for joining us. We hope you learned something new from the webinar and hope to see you again soon on another session.